Want to go on a cruise that offers you breathtaking scenery, some of the most beautiful sailways, and a chance to immerse yourself in cultural experiences? Then heading north to the majestic lands of Alaska or Norway could be the experience you're after. But if you're lucky enough to get the choice between these two magnificent destinations, how could you choose between them? Well, in this video we'll showcase some of the key considerations and differences that may influence your choice. Okay, so we're going to start with this really important factor, and that is the cost of getting to your embarkation point. And this can significantly add time as well as cost your trip, depending of course on where you're travelling from. Cruises to Norway typically embark from either ports in the UK such as Southampton or Newcastle, or alternatively North European ports such as Amsterdam or Kiel. These cruises are almost always round trips, and this can both simplify and lower the cost of your travel to and from the cruise ship. Cruises to Alaska are a little more complicated, as many of the cheaper itineraries are actually one-way trips to or from Alaska. This means you could be disembarking from ports like Vancouver or Seattle, or alternatively embarking from ports in Alaska like Seward or Whittier. And one-way itineraries mean you'll have to either make your way to or from these ports, and this typically involves flights into or out of Anchorage, and also the cost of the 2-hour journey from Anchorage to either of these two ports. Round-trip itineraries are available from Vancouver and Seattle, although these tend to be a little bit more expensive, so it's important to work out overall travel costs to your embarkation point and from your disembarkation point. And the next consideration is scenic cruising, and the beautiful scenery is often the main reason to take these cruises, and the scenery is always nicer in good weather of course, but neither Alaska or Norway guarantee you glorious sunny days, but if you get them, these are some of the most beautiful views on the planet in our view. There are though differences in the options to enjoy the scenery from the ship. Norway is renowned for the fjords, and ships typically sail deep into the fjords to access ports like Olden, Flom and Eidfjord. These journeys down narrow steep-sided mountainous waterways are absolutely stunning. Timings mean that ships enter the fjords very early in the morning, often before sunrise, but this means you get breakfast with a view. Ports are set in spectacular scenery, and these small villages typically welcome cruise ships. The Norwegian people are so friendly. Sailways in the evening see you sail out of the fjord the same way that you came in, but as most fjords used by cruise ships are aligned east-west, this means that you have the sun ahead of you on both the sail in and sail away if you're lucky. When not sailing in the fjords, the many small islands off Norway's coast always provide visual interest while sat on deck. Alaska, on the other hand, offers the chance for cruisers to experience the magnificent Inside Passage between Vancouver Island and mainland Canada. This narrow and busy channel takes most of an entire day to navigate and offers up some incredible sights as you pass through it. Whether you're sat on your balcony or within a crow's nest bar, this is a wonderful feast for the eyes. Cruises to Alaska do pass through fjords like in Norway. The main cruise ports, however, are not as deep into the fjords as the more popular port stops in Norway, but in Alaska you can also experience that wonderful feeling of sailing down the fjords with views all around and a beer in your hand. And when not in the fjords or the Inside Passage, you're sailing up the coastline, and these views are, to be honest, pretty incredible. One of the greatest reasons to choose Alaska, on the other hand, is the scenic cruising to see glaciers. And cruisers often enter Glacier Bay or Disenchantment Bay to see one of the many glaciers that carve into the sea. So now let's talk about glaciers, and both Alaska and Norway allow you to experience glaciers but in different ways. In Norway, excursions to see glaciers are possible from ports like Olden, Geiranger, Vik, Voss and Bergen. Most cruise line excursions are to view the glaciers from selected viewpoints, and often guides are able to point out the features of the glacier. There are specialist activities to hike on the glaciers, but we found that these are typically not offered by the cruise lines. An excursion to experience husky dog sledding in snowfields is possible, but only during winter months. In Alaska, glaciers are a big part of the attraction of the cruise. Not only do excursions take you to viewing areas such as the incredibly popular Mendenhall Glacier at Juneau, but helicopter rides onto the glaciers themselves are also offered from ports like Skagway. These are offered by most cruise lines and can transport you onto a safe area of the glacier where guides can show you specific features. However, one of the key differences from Norway is the access that most cruise ships have to the carving faces of the glaciers where they meet the sea. Glacier Bay and Disenchantment Bay are the two most common areas for cruise ships to visit, and passengers can observe the glacier from the deck of the ship as icebergs carve from the face of the glacier, and this is a truly breathtaking sight and a really memorable experience that does set it apart from most of the cruises we've done to Norway. Husky dog sledding is available also during summer months in Alaska, with helicopters whisking passengers high up into the snowfields. So the extent to which you want to experience the natural wonders of glaciers is an important consideration in choosing between Alaska and Norway. Another key differential is the number of available port stops, and Alaska has 15 main port stops used by the cruise ships, with most cruise lines sticking to the same few: Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway, Sitka, Icy Strait, Whittier and Seward. The other ports are in less common use and are typically frequented by smaller ships. The number of ports being used by the main cruise lines does mean that a repeat trip to Alaska will almost certainly see you revisiting some ports. Norway, on the other hand, has over 50 cruise ports, and even on the main cruise lines it's been possible to undertake several cruises to Norway and revisit only a few cruise ports. There is a fantastic choice of itineraries available, and this is one of the key attractions of Norway. You can revisit and always experience somewhere new. And the cruise ports deep into the fjords are the most popular, with ports like Flåm, Olden, Eidfjord, Geiranger and Skjolden being on many cruisers' must-see lists. One thing to note though is that from 2026 the Norwegian government is clamping down on the environmental emissions of cruise ships entering certain fjords, and this of course is a really good thing. But in the short term it will limit the number of ships that can access these ports deep into the fjords, but as fleets are upgraded to meet modern environmental standards this will surely improve again. There is a terrific variation in the types of ports in Norway too, from bustling coastal cities like Bergen, Stavanger, Haugesund and Kristiansand to chocolate box remote villages deep in the fjords. Norway does seem to edge it with regards to choice of ports, and even cruises to the very far north, way up beyond Tromsø and even to the magical Lofoten Islands are all possible on many mainstream cruise lines. However, Alaska does have its own ace up its sleeve, in that it has a very well established tourism industry that runs land tours for cruise passengers disembarking in both Seward and Whittier. These coach and train based tours whisk passengers deep into Alaska's stunning and desolate interior, stopping at key towns and locations such as Talkeetna, Fairbanks, Anchorage and of course the magnificent Denali National Park. This is exceptionally well run, with cruise lines investing heavily in options to extend your Alaska cruise holiday with a land tour. Accommodation is well specified luxury lodges and hotels and is all part of the experience. The opportunity to explore Alaska's wilderness is a real joy, but to also see its wildlife, well, that's something we'll never forget. Cruises to Norway typically don't have a land tour option, and as mentioned earlier, ships typically return to their embarkation port. Norway does though have an excellent set of travel options for those wanting to explore its interior, even in the snowy winter months. There are excellent railways and also an efficient coastal ferry service that can take explorers throughout the length and breadth of this beautiful country. Next, winter cruising options and opportunities to see the Northern Lights. The cruise season in Alaska is typically from April to October. In the shoulder months in April and October, only a few cruise lines offer itineraries, but these are also good months to see the Northern Lights in Alaska. During the main cruise months over the summer, seeing the lights is possible, but as hours of darkness are so short, it's actually quite rare to see them from the ship. Norway does have a winter cruise season, with many cruise lines braving the rougher seas to transport passengers into the Arctic Circle to witness this jaw-dropping natural phenomenon. Short daylight hours are a significant feature of these cruises, so it pays wisely to do your research about the cruise ship and also the ports you'll visit, just to ensure there's enough to entertain you on these long dark nights. One aspect of both cruise destinations that should put English speakers at ease is that English is spoken in both. Nearly all Norwegians are fluent English speakers, although do have their own language of course. They are so friendly and will happily switch conversations to English for you. I just wish we could reciprocate. Alaska of course is English speaking throughout, and even when setting sail from Vancouver you are in British Columbia, an English speaking part of Canada. And our next consideration is local cultural experiences, and both destinations offer a different window into the lives of the local people. Alaska is the northernmost state of the United States, but became a state as recently as 1959. It was actually territory purchased from Russia in 1867. There are a few cultural references to the former Russian ownership for cruise passengers to experience, to be honest, but the exploration and exploitation of this region during the Klondike Gold Rush is evident in many ports like Skagway and Ketchikan, and also stops on the land tour like Talkeetna. Many of these stops do feel like a frontier destination on the edge of the Western world, and these experiences are both interesting and fun. However, you'd be crazy to overlook the chance to understand the lives of the area's indigenous population, the Tlingit peoples, and the experiences that are on offer on many of the ports are simply wonderful, be it educational exhibits, shows and performances, or even a walk in the forest with a local guide. There is so much to learn about the world around you from the perspective of the people who've lived in these lands since before national borders were invented. Norway is a modern Scandinavian country with a long history. In areas within the south of Norway, much is made of the achievements of the people referred to as the Vikings. The creation of Norway as a unified country of peoples is attributed to King Harald Fairhair after he won battles near Stavanger in 872. Cruise passengers can learn about these amazing medieval people and their influence in modern Western society through many experiences operated for the cruise ports in southern Norway. Trips to Viking farms and living museums staffed by incredible reenactors are all available from these ports. In the far north of Norway, however, are chances to experience the lives and culture of this area's indigenous Sami people who have lived and farmed these icy cold lands for thousands of years and long before Harald Fairhair could even lift an axe. With their distinct cultural identity, these people kindly offer cruise passengers insights into their lives and history. Excursions to reindeer farms and traditional Sami settlements are possible, and even a chance to sample traditional Sami cooking and recipes. These are experiences not to be missed for the traveller that really wants to understand where they are. But to experience this, you'll really need a cruise itinerary that takes in the wonderful north of the country, with ports like Narvik, Tromsø and Alta being typical destinations. So our final consideration is the cost of excursions and days out. And as travellers from the UK, we found the costs of food and drink to be comparable to the UK whilst travelling in Alaska. Norway was more expensive, but not prohibitively expensive, especially for things like light snacks and refreshments. As for trips, experiences and excursions, well, we found very similar experiences in Alaska and Norway. Well, Alaska excursions was just that little bit more expensive than those in Norway. What we would say is that all excursions we've had in both destinations, well, we found them exceptional value given the experience we've had. And that's it for our comparison of these two incredible destinations. And which would we like to do again? Well, that's a really tough one. It's almost impossible to choose between them. If we do go back to Alaska, we'd like to go back to Alaska's interior and explore more of its magnificent nature trails. These experiences were simply awesome. And the possibility of seeing even more of Alaska's fantastic and fabulous wildlife, well, that would just keep us coming back for more and more. A return to Norway would hopefully see us back up in the far north, revisiting the brilliant Tromsø and doing more exploring of this wonderful Arctic wilderness. And to be honest, it's probably this that we'd choose if pushed to make a choice between them. We hope you found this video helpful, and if you're lucky enough to have this choice ahead of you, then we don't envy your decision. And if we could, we'd do both many times over. They are some of the most beautiful places on the planet in our view. Thanks for watching.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers!